to a demonstration outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. The allegations were made by Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, who called for Chief Constable Ben Julian Harrington's resignation.
That is not true. We have not driven anybody to that project. People made their own way there. We did take people away for their safety, for the safety of everyone there, because it was the best operational thing to do.
The demonstrations began outside the Bell Hotel in Eping after a man was charged with sexual assault this month. 10 people have been arrested. A woman and 2 children have been shot dead at their home in County Fermanagh. A man's in hospital with serious injuries following the incident in Maguiresbridge. Police are treating it as a triple murder and attempted suicide. A man's been jailed for life for murdering 4 University of Idaho students as they slept. 30-year-old Brian Koberger sneaked into the home they rented and stabbed them in November 2022. And Kensington Palace has confirmed Prince William will travel to Switzerland for England's Euros final on Sunday. The Lionesses will face either Spain or Germany. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 37 points at 90.61. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather. Light showers in northern Scotland tonight. Lingering showers for central and eastern England will clear by dawn. Dry elsewhere, a low of 8 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daisy Steele.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:02 on LBC. Welcome to this Green Party leadership debate. Over the next 90 minutes, the 2 contenders will be battling it out to get your vote if you are a Green Party member. And I think I'm right in saying that you can still apply to be a member until the 31st of July and have a vote in the leadership election, which seems a little bit odd to me, but we might go down that road during the debate. Now, we've got 3 different sections to this debate. I'm going to be asking some questions. You're going to be asking some questions. And if you want to do so, the number to call is 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp questions on that number too. Text 84850. And then we're also going to have Ask Me Anything rounds where the 2 candidates ask each other questions and I sort of take a bit of a back seat. Well, that's the way I plan it to work. We'll see how that goes. So let me introduce you to the candidates. We have Adrian Ramsay, who is the current co-leader of the Green Party with Carla Denyer. Adrian, welcome to you.
Hello.
And we have Zack, who's the current deputy leader of the Green Party and wants to become the sole leader. Now, I don't mind if you which of you does this, but can you explain the system where you can have 1 fighting 2? It seems a bit odd to me. Who wants to go?
Well, there's always 3 in the leadership team, so it's either 2 co-leaders and a deputy leader, which is what we currently have. And what I'm proposing is 1 leader and 2 deputy leaders.
And you're proposing the opposite?
Yes, 2 co-leaders and a deputy leader. And when we brought in this system, we allowed people to either stand on their own or as a joint ticket. And we may discuss tonight the relative benefits of each, but the rules allow either option.
And would you both continue with that system in the future?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we find something that you agree on, because I think there's quite a lot that you don't agree on. And I mean, let's get to the core of this, because I think you both have very different visions for the future of the Green Party. One of you, Adrian, I think you seem to me to be wanting to develop a more traditional political party. And Zack, it seems to me that you want to build a sort of more of a pressure group in a sense, rather. Well, I think you can understand why I say that, because you've been talking about, effectively, I think, copying a lot of Jeremy Corbyn's language, using a sort of, or the language of the left, building sort of community groups rather than concentrating on Parliament.
So my central aim is to send as many MPs as possible to Parliament. What I believe, though, is if we carry on with slow, steady, incremental change, we might get 10, 15 MPs, great, that's better than where we are now. But actually, with the rise of reform and the far right and this deeply unpopular Labour government, I think there's an opportunity here to hold the balance of power. And I think the only way we can do that is by concentrating on communities through the traditional campaigning we've already done, but be much bolder. I think that's the key difference here. I want us to fuel the anger that's in the country right now, not to stay angry, that's just doing what Farage does, but connect with that anger and turn it into hope. I think that's the only way we win as many MPs as the Green Parties can win, if we're centre stage rather than the sidelines, which I think far too often we are at the moment.
Well, do you disagree with that?
Well, what I think is that the Green Party needs to build on the record-breaking exponential growth in councillor numbers and in MPs that we've had over the last 4 years under mine and Carla Denya's leadership. And it's not a coincidence that we've achieved that. We've achieved that because we put a clear strategy in place. We've enthused and mobilised people around that strategy. We've had a laser-like focus. We've communicated the Green Party's message in a way that appeals to a broad section of the public, because you get nowhere at all under the first-past-the-post system that we have if you don't have that wide appeal. And, I've been in the Green Party 27 years now. I've been through the wilderness years where the Green Party was not taken seriously, not seen as credible, and we adopted tactics that frankly did not work. People often said we just need to be a bit louder here, we just need to focus on this policy. We've adopted a strategy in recent years that has worked, that has got Greens elected to councils in all corners of England and Wales, that has quadrupled our number of MPs, winning in places that many journalists said to me was not possible. But the point is that when Carla and I became co-leaders 4 years ago, many people inside the party and outside said, you've been stuck on one MP for many elections. You're not going to win a second seat, let alone a third or fourth. My point is, we've not done that by accident. We've done that through a clear strategy. And Ellie and I are really ambitious about the next phase of the party. Imagine if after the next election, rather than having a horrific reform-led government, Labour are a bit short of a majority and Greens have got enough seats to have a real influence in the next parliament. But we'll only achieve that if we build on proven tactics.
Zack, you seem to me to be promoting the idea of almost a left-wing version of reform.
Yes, I think there's a lot to learn from reform. Now, I despise all of Nigel Farage's politics, but the way he has communicated blows Adrian's argument out the water. He's shown that actually if you can connect on national media and social media, he has more TikTok followers than all the MPs put together, combined with traditional campaigning. So there's no difference between me and Adrian about traditional campaigning. I absolutely want us to be in communities campaigning. The big difference, though, is I am saying we need to use methods through social media, through national media, through our personal comms to make sure we're at the centre of the argument. We need to take the fight to reform. I think what Adrian's arguing is a much more kind of traditional old politics that I think died off about 10, 15 years ago. You can do well on it, but not as well as we need to stop the crises that we're facing.
The fact is, Zack, that people have come up with grand ideas for big steps forward at all sorts of times in the past. It's proven to be magical thinking. We have made the steps forward, huge steps forward that we have through a clear strategy. And I've listened to, in all the discussions we've had, to the proposals you've brought forward, the community organising approach you talk about, very similar to what the Australian Greens adopted. And they went back from 4 MPs to 1 at the last election. We can't take for granted the progress we've made. And not only that, we need to build on that by working with proven techniques and scale them up, not starting again.
I don't think it's magical thinking. The person who ran Carla Denya's campaign is saying my strategy is right. The person who ran Sian Berry's campaign is saying my strategy is right. And they're saying when key decisions are made about electoral strategy in the Green Party, their words, not mine, you want Zack in the room. So I don't think it's fair to say it's magical thinking. I think what I'm talking about is putting rocket boosters on our party to say we need to challenge the far right. We need to challenge the climate crisis, the nature crisis. There's a genocide going on in Gaza. Standing in Parliament and asking questions is not enough. We need to build a mass movement to then ask questions in Parliament with the base of all the people across this country.
Do you not run the risk of only appealing to people on, I'm not going to say the far left, but on the left of British politics? Whereas, Adrian, I think your approach so far has been to try to attract people from other parties, not just on the left of British politics.
Well, my approach is based on the fact that in order to win seats under first past the post, you have to have a broad appeal. I mean, that is how the system works. I'd like to change that system, but there's no sign of that happening anytime soon. And I don't take for granted the fact that we have over 860 councillors in all corners of England and Wales. We have quadrupled our number of MPs. We've got to build on that. But yes, you've got to communicate the Green Party message in a way that has the broad appeal. If you just appeal to a narrow section of the public with the way that you present, the way you come across, that is not going to win us the seats that we've got.
So I'm doing the opposite of the narrow appeal. I'm saying let's have mass appeal. Let's lower people's bills through nationalising our public services, a very popular policy. Let's make sure that we're reducing people's bills through a tax wealth on multimillionaires and billionaires, a wealth tax, a very popular policy. I'm talking about tackling the climate crisis, a very popular policy. All of these things are popular. The problem is people don't know we exist because they think we just care about the environment.
All right, let me ask you both this question. Yeah. How do you attract a moderate Conservative voter to vote Green?
I think by being sensible and credible and talking about the things that we care about, and that's exactly the proposal I'm putting forward. But I'm suggesting...
some of those policies that you've just articulated, they're going to put off Conservative voters.
I don't think that's true. In fact, I spent the election with a Guardian journalist one day who was really surprised as they came round on the doorsteps with me about how easily I was able to connect with people who are completely different backgrounds. A dairy farmer, for instance. They watch me on the doorstep, and actually when you talk to people and connect with people, these policies are popular. The real difference is between the 99% in this country and the 1%. And when I say the 99%, I'm talking about working class communities, I'm talking about people who run small businesses, I'm talking about farmers. I think ultimately when we recognise inequality hurts you everywhere, whether you live in a town, a village, the city or the country, whether you voted Tory or Labour or even Reform, the Green Party can and must appeal to you.
Adrian, how do you attract Conservative voters?
Well, I won a seat from the Conservatives, as did Ellie Chowns, and I also have been a councillor in a very traditional Labour area in Norwich, where I built the Green Party up to be the largest group of Green Party councillors in the country, winning seats that were traditionally Labour. So I've represented both types of areas, and I know what Green councillors around the country have done, worked really hard to take that appeal to a wide cross-section of the public. We've got to communicate in ways that affect people's lives, but we've also got to show that we're credible. We've gone for years and years with people saying, of course I agree with what the Green Party's aiming for, but you're just not credible, you just can't put it into practice. Well, we put forward a manifesto at the last election that was really credible. I defended it throughout that campaign, showing how we had a costed set of proposals. Now Zack is trying to pretend that every single problem in society can come down to whether you're on the 99% or you're on the 1%. Is that really the sort of messaging that ordinary members of the public are going to... You think you can solve every single problem?
If you're not recognising the inequality in this country, you're not being credible. If you're not being bold about tackling the inequality in this country, you're not being credible. Everything in this country comes to inequality.
Zack, you're trying to pretend there are differences between us on policy, which in most areas there aren't.
Well, you pretended I wasn't there at the leadership the general election when I ran around the country, including talking to Mr. Ian Dale, defending our manifesto. So that's not a difference either. The difference here is about who can cut through and who can communicate to the rest of the public.
The difference here is who's got the winning strategy. And when Carla Denyer and I were elected as co-leaders 4 years ago, we put in place a strategy for those 4 years to make sure we could expand from the one MP we had, and lots of journalists like Ian said to me, are you really going to win in Bristol? Are you really going to have a second MP? Well, not only did we do that, we had a third and a fourth. And the reason why people like Caroline Lucas and leading Greens across the country are backing Ellie and I is because they can see that having got that 4 Green MPs into Parliament, we're now at the centre of the British political debate. We have the Green Party leadership at the centre of that debate. We need to keep it there, but we also need to bring...
endorsements? The president of the Bakers Union is endorsing me. Grace Blakely, an economist, is endorsing me. James Medway, previous advisor to John McDonnell, is endorsing me. My point is, these are people right across the political spectrum who are saying that I've got the right strategy, including Caroline Lucas's previous campaign manager.
But what I find interesting here is that you served as deputy leader under Adrian and Carla as leader. I don't remember interviewing you where you've come out with all of these differences in the past, and I don't remember, Adrian, you ever criticising sort of Zack as your deputy leader, and yet in the first 12 minutes of this debate you've been going at it hammer and tong.
Well, I think that's partly a leadership campaign, right? But what I would say, and you can play back any tape of me on this show or any show...
Oh, we've got a few tapes of you coming up, don't worry.
I've always pushed for bold leadership. I've always pushed for these policies, and so there's no difference in my tone. I think I was just always a little bit bolder than maybe Adrian has been.
But the truth is, Zack, you have been in every leadership meeting in the party that I've been in over the last few years. You've had the same opportunities to raise these completely different ideas if you wanted to take the Green Party in a different direction. You've not done that. We came together at the general election under a strategy that Carla and I put in place to make sure we were successful, and we've got to build on that, and that's about taking our message to a wide section of the public that will come behind the Green Party if we show in very practical ways how we'll address inequality, how we'll restore our public services, how we'll tackle the nature and climate crisis. It can't be about bold statements, it's got to be about showing how we'll make a practical difference to people's everyday lives.
I think what Adrian's saying there is I've been a key team player and I've got on with it. We've disagreed many a time, and then I've taken collective responsibility and gone out there for the party and batted for the Green Party. I've been proud to do that. I think we've done really well, and I've been really proud that I and thousands of people have been part of that success. What I'm saying now, though, is let's stop talking about history. Let's look forward to the future, where we need to be doing so much more, being so much bolder and showing real leadership.
Let's finish off this section by asking you this. Do you both accept that whichever one of you wins, it's going to be a very different future for the Green Party?
So I don't think it's that different. I think I'm going back to the roots of the Green Party, which was about intersectional justice, and all I mean by that is both the environment, but also social justice and economic justice. Putting all of those things together, we're ultimately talking about comms.
You're talking about comms?
Yeah, I'm just talking about essentially our communication being bolder. This isn't a change in policy, a change in strategy. It's talking about cutting through. I put out a video this morning. It got 1.4 million views.
I watched it.
Right, well, there we go. And I think making sure we're making more content like that, so more people in the country are thinking about the Green Party.
That video, I mean, as a political video, I think it worked quite well, but it was simplistic and populist, actually, wasn't it?
I think populist is important. So this is about the 99% versus the 1%, and that video is about inequality, saying the problem of migration is not the problem of the boats, it's the problem of the private jets and the yachts, multimillionaires and billionaires, and decades of austerity government.
That's where, because you finished saying, it's all about rich people's yachts. I'm thinking, are you being serious? Is that really what you think is the problem with our economy?
Money hoarded in assets is absolutely the problem.
How many people in this country have huge yachts?
Well, just a few, and that's the problem. So what we need to be doing is circulating that money around the economy and spending into our public services. That's exactly what Gary Stevenson, a friend of mine, has been talking about regularly all over the country, is saying let's tax the wealth of the multimillionaires and billionaires and fund our public services.
The same question.
It might be simplistic, but it's not being done.
The same question to Adrian. Do you accept that this is a fork in the road for the Green Party, that for the next generation, the next 10 or 15 years, it's either your direction or it's Zack's direction, and they are very different?
Well, there are some very different choices in front of Green Party members here. Absolutely. People have a big choice to make. And the choice is, do we build on the huge success we've had in recent years, build on a winning strategy, take the Green Party's message in a way that's proven to a wide cross-section of the public, or do we risk going backwards? Because, anyone can come on a programme and show how they've got support on social media or how they've got people who are already in their political persuasion backing them. But have they actually got the track record? Has Zack actually got the track record of winning at a large level? There's only one set of candidates in this leadership election, Ellie Chowns and I, who've won seats under first past the post.
We're about to have an election where members can show that they've got the track record.
Well,
so
we will see, won't we? And the voting does begin on the 1st of August, so just over a week's time. We've got lots and lots of calls coming, and we're going to come to those next. It's 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Apply.
Ian Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
90 minutes past 8. I should, of course, have told you that you can watch this debate on Global Player or the LBC app if you'd like to see my two colleagues here, as I said before, going at it hammer and tong, because it's been quite a spiky start, hasn't it? We're going to go to your calls now. Lots of them coming in. We've got one spare space on the switchboard. If you don't succeed at first, do keep trying. Dylan is in Sheffield. Dylan, hi.
Hi there. Yeah, so my question is about young people getting more engaged in politics. Young people really kind of feel left out. So what would you do to get young people more engaged, and what specific policies would you do to get young people more involved in politics and the Green Party?
Now, you're both in your 40s, although you don't look it, both of you, I have to say. But appearances can be deceptive. I mean, do you feel that, as somebody of that age, that you can appeal to young people? Adrian, let's start with you.
Well, hi, Dylan. Good to hear from you. Yes, I mean, when I joined the Green Party, I was 16. There was no Young Greens group at that time, and I was a founder member of the Young Greens because I believed passionately that we needed to have a strong Young Greens group in the party. And since then, we have worked really effectively to support that group, to grow that group, to get lots of Young Greens elected in positions to councils around the country as part of Greens having a real impact. And I've always been passionate that Young Greens should not be a separate part of the party, but should be part of an integral part of what we're doing, because there are so many Green Party policies that will have a real impact on young people. The biggest one I think of in my constituency and from young people I talk to around the country is housing. The huge costs of housing to rent, and for anyone who can eventually start to think about it, housing to buy, are just eye-wateringly unaffordable for people. And Labour has really sold people down the river here, young people but all people, by setting this housing target that's effectively just a developer's charter. Because if you put in place a plan for 1.5 million homes, but you don't require that a lot of them are affordable homes, social to homes to rent, affordable homes to buy, then you're just giving money to private developers. You're not actually meeting people's needs, and that's what people really need.
How can you signal to younger people like Dylan that the Green Party is for them? Because, I mean, to be fair to Reform, they've got quite a good track record on this. They've got a council leader in Warwickshire who's 18 years old, I think it's 19 years old now. And that you could... I mean, we can all have views on whether that's going to work out, but if it does, I mean, what better signal could Reform send than that?
Well, we have lots of young Green councillors elected, and I've practically helped them. I know Zack's practically helped them going out on doorsteps to campaign, helping the Young Greens group develop. That's absolutely crucial. So we've sent that signal as well. We've had policies for a long time for things like votes at 16, which are eventually coming in now to make sure young people can play a full role in our democracy. But it's about making sure politics really works for them, whether it's on climate, whether it's on housing or anything else.
Zack?
Yeah, one of my favourite things I do in the party is go to those Young Green Action Days, which is where we go and campaign for Young Greens, and then it's amazing to see them elected. Young people are the beating heart of our party, and I often say, if you want to see the Labour Party manifesto in 5 or 10 years' time, look at a Green Party manifesto right now. But actually, if you want to see the Green Party manifesto at the next general election, have a listen to what Young Greens are talking about. They're often talking about issues that I think if you heard them, you might have a heart attack and go, what are you talking about? But actually, they often win the argument, because I think they're the people who are being screwed over by so much of the inequality in our society. It comes back to inequality, whether it's tuition fees, rising rents, lack of employment or proper working conditions at work. And so I can't stand it when I hear politicians say, and Adrian didn't say this, but I'm so inspired by young people. Stop being inspired by them, actually help them to be in elected positions of power so they can co-design policy to make sure that for future generations, it's their planet, it's their community.
Dylan, do you want to come back quickly?
I thought that definitely I agree. I've been involved with the Young Greens in the past. I'm a Green Party member. But yeah, I liked what both of you had to say on that. Thank you.
And who are you going to vote for?
That's a great question. I don't think I'm going to answer that.
That's what I specialise in, but you're not going to answer it, are you? Interesting.
No.
All right. Right, let's go to our next call. It's from Shara in Havering. Shara, hi.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Now, what would you like to ask?
Why won't either of you articulate a clear, unequivocal definition of what it is to be a woman, as already expressed by the Supreme Court ruling? We need this in order to safeguard the rights of women and girls and their protections, whether it's in prisons, hospitals, or fairness and safety in sport. We are absolutely undermining our credibility without doing that.
You are Shara Ali, aren't you, the former deputy leader of the Green Party, and you were expelled. You won a court case over these whole issues against the Green Party, and you've been expelled from the party. OK, let's go to Zack first.
Yeah, I think it's important, first of all, to say that Sherrard didn't win his court case on these issues. He won it on a failure of process, which still is not good, but it's very, very different.
It cost the Green Party a lot of money.
Absolutely, but ultimately the court said, and it's important, that a political party has the right to choose who their spokespeople are and what their policies are. That seems basic. Otherwise, a Prime Minister who chooses their cabinet could end up getting sued because they, reshuffled the cabinet because they didn't agree with someone. I think there's not a fixed definition of what a woman is, because feminism and the feminists I listen to say that they're not to be put in a box. And actually, through decades of feminism, all the different types of feminism, what a woman is, just as a man is or a non-binary person, is complicated and it's on a spectrum. And I don't think it's right that anyone should define what someone is. As a gay man, I can't stand it when people say gay men must be this or they must be that. I lived through Section 28. I've experienced what it's like to be part of a community that feels like it's being hounded by particularly right-wing media, and I think trans people are going through that experience at the moment too. So I don't think, A, we should be defining what women are, and B, I think our feminism should be inclusive.
But surely it's very easy to define what a man is and what a woman is.
I don't think it's easy at all. I think there's a lot of complication. For instance, there's intersex people, there's people with all sorts of chromosomes and different DNA, but also, even if it was simple, I don't believe we should be living in such a conservative box that we say, I've decided you're this, you're that category, and so you must be that. I think it's up to all of us to decide who we are, and I think the only important thing is that we treat everyone with the dignity and respect that any human being deserves. So you're happy that a biological man with a penis can identify as a woman? I mean, that's just ridiculous. I don't think it's ridiculous at all, and I think it's a little bit offensive to say it's ridiculous. That would be a trans person. Trans people have existed for a long time, and actually there's lots of evidence to show that it's fossil fuel companies. You can be a trans woman, but you're not a biological woman. There is a difference there. Sure, but I don't think... so trans people are not saying necessarily that they are biologically different. They're just saying, can you treat us with dignity and respect and let us pee in peace? I think we should let people do that. Adrian?
Well, interesting that last bit of what Zack said, there's no difference between us on, and we have to recognise that this is an issue we need to talk about very carefully, because we live in a society that is still incredibly unequal when it comes to people's sex, in terms of the gender pay gap, in terms of violence against women and girls. And we also live in a society where trans people are persecuted. And I've seen a non-binary friend of mine be verbally abused in the street, and that's just awful. And anyone who's received that sort of abuse or worse. What did you do on that occasion? Well, we walked away because that felt like the safest thing to do in the situation. But you don't really agree with your own party policy on this issue, do you? So, I mean, actually, the way Zack just put it suggests there isn't a difference between I think a trans man is a man and a trans woman is a woman, and non-binary identities are valid. I think that might be the difference. So you just said that trans people recognise that there's a difference between someone's biological sex and their gender. I would agree. I said some people, some trans people. I would agree with that. The reason why we need to talk about it carefully is because, of course, people want to respect. I want to respect. The vast majority of people want to respect the fact that people will have identities that we must treat as valid, whether it's trans women, trans men, non-binary people. Does that mean it's a really straightforward issue? Well, no, it doesn't, because in most contexts in society, of course, and I do this in my everyday life, I'm sure you would, Ian, you treat people as you find them. That's what people do. But there are circumstances where services need to be provided based on biological sex, or biological sex plus people who have a gender recognition certificate in certain cases. And the circumstances where you do that are complex. Like, you could have a whole debate around which sports does that apply to? How do you make sure that in a context of a domestic violence refuge, for example, that women have the right to receive services and treatment in a way that feels right to them at the most vulnerable time in their life, and that trans women also get access to the support they need? These are the sorts of complexities on this issue that exist, and I'm sceptical of people who try and portray a very complex issue as black and white. But you know as well as I do, you got into a lot of trouble with your fellow Green Party members after an interview you did with Nick Robinson, where you said you supported the Supreme Court decision. You got absolutely traduced by a lot of people in the Green Party after that, and I actually genuinely thought at the time that, well, he's got no chance of standing then because of this. Do you still stand by what you said in that interview? Yes, I do, and let me explain what I said. That, of course, we have to recognise the fact that the Supreme Court has made the ruling it's had. I think Zack has said the same thing. And what it did was recognise that there are circumstances where you need to be able to use the definition of biological sex. And if you can't even use that definition, then you can't recognise that there are certain circumstances. I'm not suggesting it's everything, I'm not suggesting it's toilets, but there are certain circumstances where services need to be provided in that way, as long as you're also meeting trans people's needs. What I also said, and Carla Denyer and I put out a joint statement on this when the EHRC produced its very rushed interim guidance, was that it was extremely blunt. It was ill thought through, it was rushed. Trans people and many people who've been affected by this had not been properly consulted. And it needs proper thinking about it. When I was at a Pride event in my constituency just on Saturday, the trans women I was speaking to there was saying, will you press in Parliament that when the EHRC brings forward its updated guidance, that there's proper parliamentary scrutiny, evidence-based scrutiny, listening to trans voices, listening to women about how you provide services in different contexts. That's the level of scrutiny that it needs.
So I think the Supreme Court decision was a mess.
And if I could just say, Ian, if anyone comes to this issue trying to pretend that they can answer it in slogans, whether it's Zack or whether it's Shara, I don't believe them.
Well, let's just hear a short clip from that interview.
I think the important thing here, Nick, is not to get hung up in divisions.
Trans women, Mr. Ramsay.
But to ensure that everybody, regardless of how they define their identity, has access to the services that they need. Now, last week's ruling has highlighted the potential for some services to be provided based on sex. The question is, how do we ensure that both women and trans people have access to the services that they need in a way that meet their needs and preserve their dignity? And the trouble with yesterday's...
Sure, but my question actually was, are trans women women? Can you explain why you won't answer it?
Well,
I mean, that was probably your most uncomfortable interview, I suspect, that you've ever done. I mean, what are the consequences? What's the fallout been from that?
Well, sure, it was uncomfortable in the sense that Nick Robinson was trying to turn a highly complex issue into a simplistic thing,
he was asking very simple questions, which you should have been able to answer.
That the identity of being a trans woman or being a trans man or being non-binary is entirely valid. I've always treated anyone I come across that way, and the vast majority of Green Party members, the members of the public, also work in that way. Does that mean that there aren't circumstances where services need to be provided on biological sex and that biological sex is not a real thing? Of course it doesn't. And the average member of the public, the average Green Party member, is not going to take any of us seriously if we try to pretend that's the case.
Now, Zack, on the Supreme Court decision, yes or no, do you stand by it?
No, I absolutely don't. What I said is you need to respect a Supreme Court decision because they're a Supreme Court, but you can still campaign against it and say it's wrong. And we had Keir Starmer who said, that's the Supreme Court judgment, so that's my view. That's absurd. We're legislators. The whole point is that you're meant to say this is what I think the law should be, and then the Supreme Court interprets that. So I and the Green Party will continue to campaign. I don't think it's saying that it's a slogan. For instance, I don't know if that's trans rights or human rights. Sure, that's a slogan, but actually deep down, what does that mean? It means that a trans person should have rights, that the Equality Act already gives space for bespoke services for people, and we didn't need the Supreme Court judgment.
So let's take an example then. Do you think that a domestic violence refuge should have the right to say this refuge is going to be for biological women only, and we'll make sure that there is also a provision, but it'll be a separate provision for trans women?
I think it's on a case-by-case basis.
Well, that's a cop-out.
It's not.
What do you think about sports?
Sensible, rather than treating entire communities as possibly a threat, but actually we will assess each person and each person's needs.
Let me put it more bluntly. Does someone with a penis have a right of entry to a woman's refuge?
Does someone with a penis have a right to entry to a woman's refuge?
However they identify.
Yes, if they identify as a trans person, they've been a trans person for a long time, everyone's comfortable with it, and there are...
And you think the other biological women in the refuge would be happy with that?
I think some women would be horrified that a trans woman who might themselves be subject to violence and really need to be in that refuge as someone who presents and is now a woman.
You know as well as I do that most women in that situation, because they're there because of violence towards them, they would not feel comfortable with a biological man, however they show themselves, however they identify themselves, with a penis being in that refuge. You seriously think...
Well, the return of that argument is, should we have...
I don't want the return of the argument.
No, but then you're going to put a man who has now become a trans woman in a refuge with women. So, unless you're going to say, if you're trans, you have to have always a third space, or you can't quite be a man or can't be a woman, when you face sometimes horrific violence yourself.
That's what most people do think.
I don't think that is what most people think. I think most people think just let people get on with their lives. And in fact, when we see polling, people are a lot more concerned about protecting the NHS, lowering people's bills and putting food on the table. And I think the trans wars often become a culture war.
Can I just highlight...
we've got to go to a news bulletin because we're running over time. It's 8:34 on LBC. Daisy Steele has the news headlines.
Essex police have arrested 10 people over demonstrations outside a hotel housing asylum seekers in Eping. They've also denied transporting counter-protesters to demonstrations outside the Bell Hotel, but say they drove them away from the site to safety. A murder investigation has begun in County Fermanagh after 2 children and a woman were killed in a shooting. A 4th person, a man from the same household in Maguire's Bridge, is seriously injured in hospital. A man's been sentenced to the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of parole for murdering 4 University of Idaho students. Brian Coburger sneaked into the home they rented in November 2022 and stabbed them as they slept. LBC weather, light showers in northern Scotland tonight. Lingering showers for central and eastern England will clear by dawn. Dry elsewhere. A low of 8 degrees.
This is LBC.
Is at risk.
Ian Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:36 on LBC. Right, it's time for our first Ask Me Anything round, where our combatants, I'm going to call them that, get a chance to ask the other one a question, and I sort of step back from the proceedings. So I've got a 50p coin here, so I'm going to do a coin toss. Adrian, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads it is. Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's heads.
No, it wasn't. It's tails. So
okay,
you get
strange coin.
Do you want to go first, or do you want to be?
I'll answer first.
You'll answer first. Adrian, you've got around 8 minutes.
Okay, for a series of questions.
Oh gosh.
Okay. There's a different.
If you don't want to take the full 8 minutes, I'll take it back.
Okay. Well, thank you. So, Zack, as you'll know, it's completely normal for serious, impactful national political parties to have their leaders in Westminster. And we fought so hard to get a group of Green MPs into Westminster to be at the heart of the British political debate. And that's why people like Caroline Lucas are backing us and saying we need, Ellie and I, and saying we need to continue to lead at that place, but also building on the strong track record Ellie and I have in the environmental and social justice movements. So you've talked very strongly about saying you think it's really important that the party leader is not an MP. Do you want to be an MP?
I do want to be an MP, but what I would say is the SNP, first of all, would argue with you about what a serious national party is in terms of where the leader is. But what I'd also say is your argument for being in Westminster has often been about connecting to media. But since I launched my leadership campaign, I've now done over 70 national interviews. I've not been short of accessing the media. I've not been short of getting my voice and the party's voice out there. So I absolutely think there are jobs that need to be done in Parliament, and I'm really proud you're an MP alongside the other 4 MPs, and I'm really pleased you're doing that work. But I also hear Carla really seriously when she said she is stepping down to focus on being a good constituency MP. I think if you've got 70 MPs like the Lib Dems have, then it makes a bit more sense for the leader to always be in Parliament. But with 4 MPs, it actually makes no sense for one of those MPs to be the leader, as opposed to when you've got a small group, having another group of 3 people who can go around the country building the movement that I'm talking about.
Well, Carla's made the decision she has for her own reasons, and she's explained that. But let's not try and pretend that a fantastic woman like Carla couldn't be an MP and be party leader. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that the Green Party has a long history of fantastic women leaders, from Caroline Lucas to Natalie Bennett to hopefully now Ellie Chowns, who would be fantastic. And I really don't like the idea of you as a man suggesting that she couldn't combine being an MP with being co-leader. I think she would be brilliant, and I think it would be a step backwards.
I don't think gender's got anything to do with this. I quoted Carla's exact words, which is, I'm stepping down to focus on being an excellent constituency MP. That's all I said. Nothing to do with gender.
But my point is, the Green Party has always had either a woman leader or co-leaders that have included a woman. And I do think it'd be a step backwards to go to just having a single male leader. We would be like most other parties.
Well, our best election results have always been when our leader was not an MP. And in fact, the only time we went down was when our leader was an MP, because they were balancing too many things.
I would challenge you on that, Zack. But the reason we went down in 2017 was for reasons we might come on to later, actually, which was that we gave away lots of unilateral gifts to Jeremy Corbyn, standing down for him in lots of places without getting anything in return. So that's all the more reason why we need to remain as a distinctive Green Party.
But can I also say, so at the last election, you ran to be a leader on the very platform of saying, we will use the leadership to platform our next generation of MPs. Do you not think it's time now to have the next generation of MPs and give people the platform? I think the average member of the public, and indeed lots of journalists and party members have asked me this and said, wouldn't it look really odd for the party to have its most successful election and then a year later to change its leaders? You change your leaders far too often, people say to me. But let's pick up on your point about media coverage, because you talked about 70 interviews in, nearly 3 months, so a bit under one a day. Well, Ellie and I easily do at least one a day on all sorts of issues that we are asked to speak to the media about by virtue of being MPs, and in my case being co-leader. We're actually speaking about the issues as well as speaking about our election campaign. Now, of course, if you're putting a challenge to a party leadership, you're bound to get coverage during that leadership election. But let's not think that that's going to continue afterwards when the circus of the media campaign has gone away. Do you think your interviews are cutting through?
I thought I was asking you the questions in this section. You will have some more in a minute.
I'll ask you that one in a minute.
Let's look at the.
Ian's loving this.
Let's look at our respective aims, because Zack, you've tried to claim that Ellie and I are somehow about incremental growth. Well, actually, that's literally not true. If you look at the hockey stick curve of the number of Green councillors around the country, where it's been exponential growth in recent years, that we should not talk down. We should be talking up what our party members have achieved, looking to build on that to the next level. Same with our numbers of MPs. And I'm really ambitious for the next phase of the party, as is Ellie. And I'm saying to people, imagine if instead of having a horrific reform-led government, we have Labour a bit short of a majority and enough Green MPs to have a real influence on the future of the next government, with all of what we can do to bring those protest movements' goals into Parliament. So I want to understand more about what your ambitions are. I mean, what's your aim for our number of MPs next time?
I want to make sure that when I looked at the general election results and we saw Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, I don't want to keep naming them, but Reform actually got more MPs than the Green Party did. One more. But they are now polling above us. They are cutting through every single day. And so, again, I was part of that leadership team. I'm not knocking the results we had. I was really pleased.
You spent the last few months knocking it, Zack.
Well, actually, I spent the last few years, if you ask any Green Party member, probably doing more travelling than you did, Adrian, because you were rightly focusing on your constituency, while I chose not to be an MP, because I chose to go around the country supporting other people and being a team player to make sure, along with thousands of people, I came door knocking for you and the other MPs to get you elected.
You did, and I really appreciated that. We had some good door-knocking sessions, but there were hundreds of people out campaigning in my constituency who made that difference. And the thing that made that difference was the laser-like strategy that we had, the credible manifesto that we had, and all the campaigning that we did. But I'm curious that you haven't got even close to putting a number on the number of MPs you'd like to see.
40 MPs.
40 MPs is your aim. OK, that's good to hear. So
we've got 39 second places to an increasingly unpopular Labour government. It's not just those. We should also look at the rural constituencies. But also, this is a one-year term.
Yes.
And most of those seats are in London. We have big London elections next year, and we have elections in Maseneth.
Yeah, so we're not far off, I think, in terms of our aims for the party, and we're going through a process of identifying what those target seats
So you want 40 MPs, but that's not a replicable strategy with the amount of money we spent in those 4 seats. You've got to cut through on national media. Otherwise, we just won't be heard.
We need to do both, Zack, but it's your strategy that won't work. I bet you can't point to anywhere in the world where Greens have won under first past the post without the level of intensive campaigning and laser-like progressive, credible manifesto that we had at the last election. If you start playing around with that strategy as they did in Australia. But, in Australia, they adopted the sorts of tactics that you're talking about, and we went back from 4 seats to 1. We've got to build on those.
I think what's important is Green parties from around the world today have retweeted me saying, this is the strategy, this is what our party needs to do, and that's including MPs who have said that today.
Well, we can both point to MPs from other countries who've queued up to come and talk to us.
No, but my point is, and I've not heard you say before, it needs to be both. Yes, it needs to be the community, and it needs to be social media,
come on, Zack,
and it needs to be about winning MPs. So then the question really is who is the better messenger here?
Right.
Who is the better person to mobilise those communities? Who's the better person to be known, to be understood, and to excite and inspire people? And I think that's the question here at this election.
Well, there's lots of questions at this election.
That's the key question.
And, actually, being a leader is not just about speaking on social media or delivering your lines well. It's about how you run the organisation. We were just having a conversation just now about discussing different views on a particularly contentious topic, say on
but you're
gender,
taking managerialism, which I could do anyway, by the way, over exciting and inspiring people. That's not a way to build a movement.
I don't think you've got... you haven't put forward that's experience that you can bring to the table. But let's be clear.
Have I not demonstrated in the last 3 years as deputy leader a commitment to managing an organisation?
Let's take a specific example of that, shall we? I think that the Green Party... look, we've worked well together on lots of things. I don't think either of us are going to say otherwise, but I am clear we've got to build on a strategy that Carla Denny and I put in place when we were elected, and that we've got to grow on. But let's pick a specific example. So the Green Party has had a number of court cases taken out against us. We've just heard about one of them. We've lost huge amounts of money from a lot of that, and we've also learnt a lot of lessons from a lot of them, including the fact that, as we've heard from the case involving Shara Ali, you mentioned some of the lessons. One of the other ones, which was very clear, was that gender-critical views are a belief that's protected in law. I'm going to have to stop you there
because your 8 minutes are up, and to be fair to Zack, and he can have the same amount of time. But we do need to go to a break. It's 8:46.
This is LBC. Leading Britain's conversation. Ian Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:48, Zack Polanski and Adrian Ramsay here, the two leadership candidates for the Green Party. I'm going to ask you to be relatively brief in your answers in this section so we can get through as many calls as we can. Mohammed is in Barnet. Hello, Mohammed.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hi.
I was listening to the first part of this, and I found it quite embarrassing that the two candidates for leadership are sort of at each other's throats. And for me, I just feel, isn't it more of a priority to present a united front for the Green Party and try and win the disenfranchised youth?
What's the point, though, Mohammed, in having a saccharine debate? I mean, it is a debate, and they clearly have different views.
clearly do, but in my view, I feel like when you're a minority party in the UK, your priority shouldn't be about fighting with each other, but fighting for the greater good of the party itself.
Adrian?
Well, I think this is primarily a question for Zack, because Zack was the one who decided to challenge the leadership. But, of course, in a leadership election, you have a discussion, a debate about the future direction of the party. There are important differences between us here, and it's an opportunity for party members and the wider public to hear our different visions. Now, there's not going to be lots of difference between us policy-wise. In fact, I think there's very little difference between us policy-wise. But it's about how we ensure the Green Party is effective. And having been in the party well over 25 years and been through the wilderness years where we were not cutting through, we've built a successful strategy that has got us substantial numbers of Greens elected right across the country, and we need to build on that.
Stand? I mean, you almost sounded there as if you thought you had the divine right to lead.
No, of course I don't. And actually, the Green Party is unusual in political parties in having a regular election built in, which is absolutely right that we do that. I'm just saying that Zack is the challenger, if you like, so he can explain why he's challenging. But Ellie and I want to build on the huge successful strategy we've had.
I don't think I am the challenger. We have mandatory elections every 2 years, and I decided to put my name forward, and I think that's an important tradition of the Green Party. I don't think we're at each other's throats. I think he should see me with a Labour minister if he wants to see what each other's throats are. I think we're having a robust debate because there are differences about where we see the future of the Green Party, and again, I think the key difference is Adrian just said, we're cutting through. I don't think that's true. I think if we're really honest with ourselves, we are not cutting through. I hear so many people who still think the Green Party is just about the environment. Now, I care deeply about the environment, but a party that cares just about the environment is not a party that's going to go into government. We need to make sure we're cutting through so millions of people in this country, millions more people know that the Green Party stands against genocide, it stands to tackle inequality, it stands, yes, to tackle nature and climate crisis. And people don't know that because they're not hearing from us on a daily basis.
Deborah in Harrogate follows up on this. She says, being politically homeless, I was looking forward to this debate, but good grief, are these two the best they have? Their contempt and dislike for each other is barely contained. To be fair, they haven't even attempted to hide their contempt for women. Utterly dreadful. Don't think you've won her over, either of you.
I'm afraid we might not have done, Deborah.
Do you like him?
We've worked together on all sorts of things.
Do you like him, yes or no?
I've enjoyed working with Zack over the last few years, of course.
I really like Adrian, so that does hurt.
I mean, that's quite something. You can't
I disagree with Adrian on lots of things, but I like him.
You like Zack Polanski.
Look, Zack is a valued colleague, absolutely.
This is
but you don't like him.
I like working with Zack, absolutely.
Well, you either like him or you don't like him. Well, you're making it quite clear that you don't like him.
I'm saying that I want us to have an effective Green Party. We're debating. This is a professional debate, as Zack has just said. That's the important thing. And
but if you ask me, do I like Zack? I'll say yes. If you ask me, do I like you? I'll say yes.
Absolutely. I've worked with Zack effectively. I like working with Zack. I like Zack. Absolutely. I don't understand what the issue is here.
We got there in the end. Do you like Adrian?
I really like Adrian. There's lots we disagree on, and I think he's wrong on a lot of the things he's saying tonight. But do I think he's a good person? Do I like him? Absolutely.
Let's go to Ishmael, who's a new caller in Birmingham. Ishmael, hi.
Hello, I'm a doctor working in Birmingham. I'll be attending the mega picket on Friday, so I'll be in the city centre bright and early at 6 a.m. to support the striking bin workers, and then I'll be attending the hospital pickets. One of the candidates recently made comments saying that they felt uneasy about the doctors' strikes, citing that other NHS staff need pay rises too. So my question is, do you support the doctors' strikes?
Zack.
I absolutely support the doctor strikes. I think when workers who keep our country running, whether they're doctors, cleaners, nurses, and yes, train drivers, I think the only authentic response is solidarity. I've been really proud to stand with people like Stephen, who's one of the lead strikers of the bins in Birmingham, and say, actually, government austerity is stripping councils of their money. Some councils are spending over 80% of their budget on adult social care. That's not sustainable. There is plenty of wealth in this country.
How is it green to support a bin strike when you have rubbish polluting the streets of some parts of Birmingham?
Well, it's not green at all to pollute the streets, but that's why we should pay our bin workers properly to clean the streets. That's not the bin workers' fault. Why is it green to let the doctors strike?
No.
Do you support
the doctors' strike?
Yeah, absolutely. I think doctors play a vital role.
Because the public don't seem to be supporting it in the way they did before.
I think that's because the government have been very good at dividing worker against worker, and I think as a Green Party and a broader left more generally, that's absolutely what we can't happen. I know you'll say it's simplistic, but I still see it as the 99% versus the 1%. There is plenty of wealth in this country, and it's just not being taxed properly.
Adrian?
So Zack and I were on a hustings last night with the Green Party Trade Union Group, and the chair of whom was from Birmingham. So we were sending our solidarity to the Birmingham bin workers, and I very much hope that that issue can be resolved as soon as possible. And under the last government, we saw strike after strike, didn't we, when workers had been not even given inflation-matching pay increases at a time when costs were rocketing up and up and up, whether it's people's fuel bills, energy bills, and all the other increases in rents and mortgages that we've seen. So it's really crucial, and the new government has started some progress on this.
29% in the case of doctors.
Including absolutely with the junior doctors. It's crucial that there is a medium to long-term plan in place to restore pay back to where it would have been if we'd had inflation-matching pay increases. Now, that can't be done overnight, but I do think it's important that Wes Streeting is around the table agreeing, what the way forward is.
Well, he has been around the table and the doctors walked off.
Well, those discussions have got to continue, and that was, if you remember, that was what Labour used to say.
was hinting that he didn't. I'm assuming he was talking about that you weren't as supportive as Zack.
I think it was Ellie's comments.
Okay, well, or he may have heard our debate last night, where one of the things I highlighted was that I'm particularly concerned, if you look at the NHS, about workers who are outside of NHS contracts. So they might be a cleaner, they might be a caterer. They're on far worse terms and conditions than they are if they're inside the NHS. And I've supported a cross-party campaign to support those workers. And yes, I did say that the lowest paid will always be my first priority.
Okay. Right, thank you, Ishmael. Let's go to Ben in Clacton. Hello, Ben.
Good evening, Ian. Good evening, panel. My question is, would the Green Party consider joining the other left-wing party by Jeremy Corbyn and Zara?
That's a really good question, because it's one I was going to ask but haven't had the opportunity to yet. Zack Polanski, if this party ever gets off the ground, and one has to assume that it will, I suppose, they'll shoot your fox, won't they?
As a vegan, I don't like the metaphor, but I think ultimately we're the party that got nearly 2 million votes. We've got 40 second-place finishes, and we're the party that's growing every single day. So my real message to Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, and ultimately more, all the people who might be supporting them, is join the Green Party. We're having an internal election right now where on this ticket I'm talking essentially about socialism, I'm talking about a left-wing party, I'm talking about growing our movement, and actually I want to see more people come and join the Green Party. And it was wonderful to see how many people online today have joined the party after my video. I saw post after post saying, just join the Green Party. I'm really excited about that. I think we can keep growing this movement.
Do you not feel a bit shameful about... I mean, obviously you want more people to join the Green Party, I get that. But effectively you're encouraging entryism, aren't you? People who aren't necessarily Greens but are voting, joining to vote for you because you're the lefty candidate.
I think you could have ended the question on, obviously you want more people to join the Green Party.
I could have
the
done,
whole point is I want to grow the movement, so I don't see it as entryism. I see it as ultimately, rather than having a narrow focus of the base that's always supported us, what does it look like when we turn up with trade unions? What does it look like when they're with the climate movement, the nature movement? What does it look like last week when I was on a picket line at an NHS hospital?
If this new party does form, I mean, according to polls so far, it would do reasonably well. It'll take a lot of votes off Labour, but it will also take votes off you, won't it?
Well, there's interesting polling that shows that if it did exist, they would be able to get a narrow support, but not as wide a support as the Green Party. So once again, I support anyone who wants to take on this Labour government and reform. And Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana are people I consider allies in that fight. But I do think we'd be much better if people helped grow the Green Party.
Do you, Adrian, do you consider them allies?
I certainly consider them allies on the issues that we're working on week in, week out in the country, in Parliament. And I work with progressive MPs from all sorts of parties and all sorts of issues all the time. And actually, if you look at the things that Zara Sultana is calling for, all of them are reflected in the Green Party manifesto. But if a political party is setting up without having climate and nature right at its heart, then actually it's part of the old politics more than it's part of the new politics. And it's absolutely true that there's been clear polling that's shown that the Green Party has a far wider appeal, that we appeal to voters who voted Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative and Reform last year to a much greater extent than this party would. And, frankly, let's see what happens. If Jeremy Corbyn wants to set up a new party, he'll do so, but let's not become the support act. What we need to do as the Green Party is maintain our distinct identity, which is what Ellie and I are arguing for at this election, combining right front and centre our messages on climate and nature with our arguments for social justice, and that's what takes the Green Party message to a much wider audience than we would under a different plan. You said just now
that you work with progressive forces in other parties. Does that include the Conservatives?
I have worked with Conservative MPs on issues like nature restoration, for example, animal protection issues. I engaged with a Conservative MP over the need to have parliamentary scrutiny if there was proposals for a military action in Iran. Yeah, of course I will talk to them.
Zack, would
but
you
the
work with
reality
Conservatives?
Yeah, I do all the time. I'm elected under proportional representation of the London Assembly, so we have to work together all the time.
Well, just on this, we've got an email question from Bob who says, have you ever been a member of any other parties, or is the Green Party the only party you've ever wanted to join? Adrian?
Well, I joined the Green Party when I was 16. I clearly wasn't a member of another party before that. And it's not just about whether you're a member of the Green Party or not, it's about where your values are. And for Ellie and me, we've been part of environmental and social justice movements all our adult lives.
Zack, you can't. I know the answer.
Yeah, this sounds like a bit like a purity test. I was in the Lib Dems, but actually I think that's a healthy thing. I think when you've travelled to another party, you have gone on the journey and you're able to turn to other people in other parties and go, my politics wasn't always here, but I've been won over by the arguments. I want you to hear these arguments too, so come join the Green Party.
No, I played a clip to Adrian earlier.
Okay.
Here's yours.
It's not me singing, is it?
I'm afraid it is.
Oh, gosh. Tell everyone to turn their radio down.
Ain't no mountain high.
We haven't done a sound check. It's the important thing to me.
Ain't no river wide enough, baby.
Okay, I think that's enough. That was, the 2015...
You said to Adrian, was that the hardest interview of his life? That was probably the grimmest moment in my life, just hearing that down my ear.
Well, you weren't just a Lib Dem. You were a cheerleader for Nick Clegg, weren't you?
Not for Nick Clegg. This was Tim Farron had just been elected, and he was the left's hope at that time. Admittedly, it only lasted about a week when he had some pretty uncomfortable
But to go on
comments.
stage at a Lib Dem conference and do what you did, and I've heard you and other interviews you've done on this... a lot of people are going to say, well, I want to vote for somebody who's a real Green, somebody who's been involved in the party, as Adrian has been, despite he doesn't look his years, but 25 years. You're a newbie, aren't you?
Well, I think the truth is, if you'd asked me 10, 15 years ago who the leader of the opposition was, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I had no interest in politics. Now, some people might say that rules you out for political leadership.
Perfect Lib Dem.
But I don't believe it does rule you out, because actually I think we learn, we develop, and we grow. And actually, what I really believed was that awful metaphor about, and this is really important, about the national economy being like a household budget. I think lots of people believe that myth, and I think that's why the importance of storytelling.
But you weren't just a Lib Dem member and supporter. You actively supported the coalition government which brought in austerity.
No, I was very critical of the coalition government, so this was after the coalition government.
Come on, Zack, that's just not true. That clip was from the 2015 Lib Dem conference.
Where we just had a change in leadership.
Where just before you started singing...
How long had you been a Lib Dem by then?
2 years, I think.
Just before you started
singing. So you joined it in the middle of the coalition which brought in austerity.
And so the argument I've just made is...
Justify that to all the Green Party members listening tonight.
Yes, any Green Party members who are listening. I believe that a household budget was like a national economy. That is completely wrong. But lots of people in this country believe that, which is the importance of powerful storytelling that I've been doing for years now in the Green Party since 2017. So it's not like I've just arrived at the Green Party to say, ultimately, if we want environmental, social, racial and economic justice, we need to fund it properly. And we can do that by taxing the rich, not by putting that
a friend of mine who is a Lib Dem activist I don't know whether he knew you at that time, but he knew of you at that time, and he thinks that you defected from the Lib Dems to the Greens for careerist reasons.
I think anyone defecting to the Green Party for careerist reasons back then sounds like that would be an odd decision to make. I actually defected to the Green Party because I had a debate against Natalie Bennett and spoke to her afterwards. And she said, I think you'd be really comfortable in the Green Party. Then someone was very kind and bought me a Green Party conference ticket. I went to Green Party conference, thought, actually, this feels a lot more comfortable, and moved to the Green Party. I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of.
So you're easily bought, that's the message.
Well, I just don't think we should have purity tests about what political party is. And to hear Adrian heckling me across the table about being a Lib Dem at the same time that you're saying, let's not have a narrow focus, demonstrates the incoherency of your position of, we want to keep things green. I've been in the Green Party for 20, 30 years, but we don't want new people, but we also want the gender-critical people. It's all a bit
Zack,
odd.
I don't think anyone's arguing for purity. You've been on a journey. Everyone accepts that. I do question why you were happy to be in the Lib Dems when they were bringing in the bedroom tax, tuition fees, when they were putting in caps on benefits. Clearly
because I wasn't that politically engaged. Not everyone's always been a political geek since 16.
But that wasn't that long ago. And clearly you've been on a journey.
Him a political geek?
I am. If you joined the party at 16, that's definitely political geekery.
Okay, so you've been on a journey since then.
So you don't want young voters?
I absolutely want young voters, but they're still political geeks.
But you'll call them geeks?
No, I
don't think that's true at all. Clearly you've been on a journey, right? The question is where the journey goes next. And my deep worry for the party, having been involved 25 years, is that we narrow our focus in a way that takes us back to the wilderness years. We've got to build on the huge success we've had in recent years.
That's really unconvincing, Adrian, and you know it's unconvincing.
Well, you'll have your chance to ask Adrian questions in just a few minutes' time. You are listening to LBC. It's 4 minutes past 9.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the head of the World Health Organization says Gaza is suffering man-made mass starvation because of an Israeli blockade on aid to the enclave. More than 100 human rights groups say supplies of food are now totally depleted. The agencies blame Israel, arguing its restrictions are causing chaos, starvation and death. But Israeli government spokesman David Mencer has denied responsibility.
There is no famine in Gaza. There is a famine of the truth. 87 million meals, 1.8 million tons of aid, which we've facilitated. Hamas loots, it starves its own people, and the world looks away.
The head of Essex Police has refused to resign over claims by Nigel Farage officers bust counter demonstrators to a protest outside a migrant hotel in Eping. Chief Constable Ben Julian Harrington insists that's not true. A man's been jailed for life for murdering 4 University of Idaho students as they slept. 30-year-old Brian Koberger sneaked into the home they rented and stabbed them. He initially denied the killings in November 2022, but recently pleaded guilty, meaning he'll avoid the death penalty. Surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen spoke through tears as she revisited the trauma.
He didn't just take their lives. He took the light they carried into every room and all the memories that we were supposed to make. Took away my ability to trust the world around me. What he did shattered me in places I didn't know could break.
2 children and a woman have died in a shooting in County Fermanagh. A murder investigation's underway following the incident at a house in Maguiresbridge this morning. A man's in a serious condition in hospital. A doctor's pleaded guilty to giving ketamine to Friends star Matthew Perry in the weeks before his death. The actor died in October 2023 following an overdose. And England forward Marcus Rashford has joined Barcelona on a season's loan from Manchester United. The deal includes an option to make the switch permanent. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 37 points at 90.61. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather: light showers in northern Scotland tonight. Lingering showers for central and eastern England will clear by dawn. Dry elsewhere, a low of 8. Cloudy with showers for East Anglia and the far southeast of England. Generally cloudy elsewhere but brighter in the afternoon. A few showers for East Scotland. Highs of 25 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daisy Steele.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale.
Seven minutes past 9 is the time on LBC. We're in the middle of our Green Party leadership debate with Zack Polanski and Adrian Ramsay. It's Zack's turn to quiz Adrian for 8 minutes, starting now.
I think I'm going to be much kinder than you were to me, but anyway. 16 and 17-year-olds can now vote. Nigel Farage, as I said, has a bigger TikTok presence than all the MPs combined. Can you cut through on social media, and how do you plan to do it?
Well, I think communicating with young people in a whole range of ways is really important. And of course, we've got to do that on social media. The Green Party's built our social media presence and platforms significantly in recent years, and we need to do that far more. And that's an area that the party needs to invest in. As you'll know, Zack, we've focused our investment as a party over the last decade in our field team, in the people that have helped us win far more local election seats right around the country. I was one of the strongest advocates for that 10 plus years ago when I was deputy leader of the party, and that has absolutely worked. It's built a huge increase in our number of councillors. We now need to put the same levels of investment into our communications, whether it's social media, whether it's communications, and that's about fundraising. And I want to continue to bring the fundraising skills that I have brought to the party and to charities I've led to enable us to do that. that. And actually, there's only 2 Green politicians that have raised significant 6-figure sums regularly for the Green Party, and that's Caroline Lucas and myself. And I want to carry on building those resources as well as growing our membership in a way that enables us to do that.
And you said that the Green Party has grown its social media significantly. Have you grown your social media significantly?
Yeah, absolutely. My social media following is at least 10 times as big as it was when I became co-leader, and I will continue to grow that. But let's not boil this down to what individual personalities are doing. It's about how we grow the organisation as a whole. I know you're keen on talking about populism, and populism tends to rely on the cult of an individual personality, usually a man, to deliver its politics. It's usually about lots of style and not that much substance. You don't think the leader
having a personal social media following?
No, I think it's very important.
Okay.
But actually, with co-leaders, there's 2 of you. You can be in 2 places at once. You're building the profile of the 2 of you. Your deputy leader, the other MPs. It's very much about how we grow the profile of the organisation.
Can you give me any examples of video storytelling that you've done that has cut through or made a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there was a video that I did with Carla Denyer a few days ago when we were talking about the extreme heat, the fact that in London just a few weeks ago, we had 300 people died as a result of a heat wave. Absolutely appalling. We're nowhere near prepared enough as a country for the changes in the climate that are already happening, let alone what's coming down the track. We did a video about that got really good traction that Carla and I put out together, and there's been lots of others similar.
And we got 39 second-place finishes, most of them, in fact, all of them, but one Labour-facing. Both you and Ellie are MPs in previous Conservative constituencies.
Yeah.
How do you plan to appeal to those people who have formerly voted Labour?
Yeah, well, you and I have both argued in this election, Zack, that the differences between winning people over in rural areas and urban areas are exaggerated. I talked to the Green MPs for Brighton and Bristol, Carla and Sian, and the sorts of issues affecting their constituencies, the health services being cut back so people can't get a doctor and dentist when they need one, the rivers being polluted, the disability benefit cuts. These are the things that come up in all our constituencies. And, I cut my political teeth in politics in my 20s, winning council seats in Norwich, council seats in council estates that were some of the most deprived in east of England. We won seat after seat from Labour at a time when nationally the Green Party had little profile. So I'm very much used to representing urban areas and rural areas, and Ellie is as well, and we need to bring that experience to the party. Now, what I would argue is that we absolutely need to have target seats for the next election for winning off Labour, and there's lots there, including ones where we finished second, where we've got a really good chance of doing that, and we've been winning council by-elections and defections that support that. But we can't rule out also targeting some Conservative seats around the country where we've got lots of Green councillors, and there's loads of Conservative MPs who are very complacent and have been there for a long time.
Agreed. This is a hard job, Ian, getting someone to stop. My campaign team is very diverse.
Particularly you.
There are one of the worst. There's working class volunteers, there's people of colour, and there's a big age range. Is your campaign team the same?
Yes, we've got a good age range, good diversity. Amanda Omenwene, who's the chair of the Global Majority Greens, is backing us, which I'm delighted. You probably don't want us to get into the endorsement of again.
You've mentioned her a few times. Are there other people who are diverse who are backing you? Because it does seem quite older, white and middle class, which is not to say they're not welcome in the party, but it seems very like you're appealing to a very small section of the party.
Well, no, that's not true at all.
Okay,
if you look at the range of people who are supporting us, we've got councillors around the country supporting us, we've got activists in different local parties supporting us, and that involves people who are obviously active in the campaign, as well as people who we've worked with for years. And as I say,
I noticed that you moved away from diverse and working class to we've got councillors. Well, do you have a range of councillors?
We've got loads of councillors who are backing us, as I'm sure you'll see.
A diverse range, because every time I see you post, they often seem to be.
Well, you can't really tell whether someone's working class or not from looking at their photo, can you, Zack? I mean, we've got lots of working class councillors. I come from a very ordinary...
I know these people because I campaign around the country.
Well, so do I, actually. And right. I come from a very ordinary background myself. I'm very pleased that we've got more councillors in more working class areas, as I was myself 20 years ago, and we need to amplify that, and lots of those people are supporting Ellie and I.
Something Ellie said the other day to me, and I don't know if you agree, is she said she wasn't convinced that Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana were rooted in green values, and you talked tonight about would climate be there. You've also made a point that gender-critical women should absolutely be welcome in the party. So is it your view that someone who is gender-critical is more welcome in the party than someone like Jeremy Corbyn or Zara Sultana, who I would say are absolutely rooted in recognising climate justice as social justice?
Look, I work with Jeremy Corbyn, with lots of progressive MPs in Parliament on all sorts of issues all the time. If they were seriously interested in joining the Green Party, we'd have that conversation. But, you know, they're going to set up their own party. My point is we need to maintain a distinct identity. Now, on the gender-critical point, we can debate whether or not we want to be an open, inclusive party.
I'll come back to the gender-critical point. No, but with the Jeremy Corbyn point, are they welcome in the party, in your opinion?
Look,
if they wanted
to be part of our party,
yes.
As part of a broad church party, absolutely.
Okay,
if they'll sign up to Green Party views, but I don't think you think that's any more likely than I do. What I want to make sure is that if Jeremy,
I think it's likely if I'm leader and we make sure the party is bolder.
I think you're deluding yourself on that, Zack. Jeremy Corbyn will set up his own party. We mustn't be the support act. We need to maintain a distinct Green Party
I don't think we should
identity.
be the support act either, but what I would say is I've been with Jeremy Corbyn on several panels in the last month, a few months. In fact, I've been around the country, and Jeremy Corbyn has been on many of those panels. I've been at almost every Palestinian Solidarity campaign march. I don't think you've done one, have you?
We can talk about our work with Jeremy Corbyn all the time. He's supported a number of the proposals that I've put forward in Parliament recently, as I have with his, whether that's been on animal protection, disability benefit cuts, or the genocide in Gaza. Of course we have. Let's talk about the gender-critical women issue, which I think you wanted to ask about as well. So this is partly about, are we respecting the traditional values of the Green Party of being open to different discussions and views? Now, we would definitely agree that if anyone is personally abusive towards someone, that is totally unacceptable, whatever views they come from. But the fact is that gender-critical views are respected in law. Now, I would argue that any sensible organisation has got to be able to have a range of views within it. Otherwise, you're just not living in the real world in terms of how you run a mass movement. But let me just finish.
Would you want a spokesperson?
Let me just finish.
Well, I meant to ask him the questions.
Would
you want a spokesperson that was gender-critical?
What you haven't been able to answer is whether you'll respect the law, which says that we have to allow...
to respect the law. It's the law, but it doesn't mean that I can't challenge it and say that I don't think a gender-critical person should be a spokesperson for a progressive organisation.
Thrown out of the party for reasons that were completely flimsy. And when we've had cases like that...
Well, I don't know the reasons because I don't get involved with disciplinary processes.
That's what you always say. But I believe in standing up against...
You get involved with disciplinary processes?
I believe in standing up against injustice wherever I see it.
Adrian, do you get involved? Don't make me Jeremy Paxman. Do you get involved with disciplinary processes?
Not in the decision-making, no.
Okay, good.
But if I see injustice, I will make sure the Green Party has got a disciplinary system that not only reflects our values, but reflects the law. Otherwise, you're going to cost us millions of pounds.
Would you let a gender-critical person be a spokesperson for the Green Party?
One word.
Not if they were being abusive to individuals, no.
Right, that is the 8 minutes up. In a moment, we're going to come back to your calls. It's 16 minutes past 9.
This is LBC. Ian Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
17 minutes past 9. Adrian, Ramsay and Zack Polanski still with me answering your questions. Oliver is on the Wirral. Hello, Oliver.
Oh, hello. I'd like to ask, I'm assuming they're both fairly left-wing progressive. I'd like to ask deterrent. And I am wondering if a thing about the Green Party and whatever the other chap is not having a nuclear deterrent. So I am wondering if, with Vladimir Putin being a mad, psychopathic, crazy dictator, weird person with lots of nuclear weapons, if we should have nuclear weapons.
Okay. Zack.
So we should absolutely defend Ukraine and we should defend it against Vladimir Putin, but we know that nuclear weapons do not necessarily make us safer, nor do they make Ukraine safer. Now, in this country, I think we need to talk about real security. Real security is from the climate crisis, from the fact we have veterans who have fought for this country who are sleeping on the street, spending £15 billion.
Those are other issues. Oliver's asked about the nuclear deterrent. Do you agree with the nuclear deterrent?
No, I don't. And
not?
I think spending £15 billion on nuclear warheads, and the fact that America has now put nuclear weapons supposedly in Lakenheath near Adrian's constituency is pretty dire.
Adrian.
Well, we'll both support Green Party policy on this, which is to move away from the potential humanitarian catastrophe of nuclear weapons. And this country has not kept up with its obligations in terms of the international treaties for moving away from nuclear weapons. And there's lots of retired army generals and other international security experts who argue that actually nuclear weapons are the weapons of the Cold War. They're not about keeping us safe today. What we do need to do is to stand absolutely shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, be really clear that Zelensky is the aggressor, is the dictator in this situation. And that's why the Green Party in recent... Thank you. That Putin is absolutely stands shoulder to shoulder with Zelensky, that Putin is the dictator in this situation. And that's why I supported the Green Party changing its policy a few years ago on NATO to say we absolutely want to reform NATO, to not have a nuclear weapons first strike policy, but we must stay in NATO in order to show that international solidarity at a time of an increasingly dangerous world. And that's a change that I think it was important for the party to make to show our credibility on international affairs.
Philip is a new caller in Greenwich. Hello, Philip.
Oh, hello, Ian. Nice to talk to you, and nice to talk to the chaps.
What's your question, Philip?
I'm very interested. I've just joined the Greens, actually, and I've been watching the poll numbers. I'm certainly going to vote for Zack, but I'd like to ask something different about Brexit. I think the Greens are in favour of going back in the EU, and I certainly have. I think it's been the greatest bit of national harm we've ever done, actually, to this country. And what's both their plans for getting him back in as soon as possible?
Adrian.
Well, Philip's absolutely right to highlight that the Green Party was at the heart of the campaign against Brexit and for staying in the European Union. We've always been an internationalist party, and whether it's issues of climate change, whether it's international security, tackling global threats like AI, there's all sorts of issues where we are stronger together, and being part of the European Union was a core part of that. Now, we've had the disaster of Brexit. It's clearly not worked for us on any level, whether it's in terms of people's freedom of movement, whether it's in terms of the economy. And so we've got to make the case, firstly, in the short term, for greater integration with the European Union, not just on trade, which the government talks about and could do more on, but on things like the Erasmus scheme, exchange schemes, bringing back in freedom of movement, re-entering the customs union, I think would be a huge step forward, which would remove red tape. Fully. Well, those are the steps I'd take for now. I do think we need to start a discussion with the European Union about what, in the longer term, a process for rejoining would look like. But, I'm not arguing for that right now, because actually there's a big discussion that needs to happen in the country.
Zack.
Welcome to the party, Philip, and thank you very much for your vote. I do support rejoining the European Union. I think it was one of the most catastrophic decisions that this country has made. And I think I said earlier that inequality is at the heart of everything. We know that leaving the European Union has exacerbated that inequality, whether it's farmers, musicians, people who want to travel, people who love people who live in other countries who are now finding it more and more difficult. And again, the friction that we have on trade. So absolutely, I think the Green Party should stick with our rejoin the EU policy.
We found an issue they agree on. Excellent. To be fair, there are lots of others. Before we go to the next question, you're not going to like this question, Adrian, because somebody said to me today, when I told them I was interviewing the two of you, and they said, but Adrian Ramsay, he's so boring, isn't he? Tell me what I can tell my friend. What's the most out there thing you've ever done?
Well, I mean, joining the Green Party when I was 16 in order to... Zack said earlier, it's actually quite unusual for people of that age to get involved in politics. I was
Theresa May ran through a wheat
councillor when I was 21. Are you mean in terms of things like... Well, I don't think this overly personalised form of politics is actually the route we want to go down. People can try and personalise politics all they want to, but I'm for working for my constituents. That's what I care about.
You see, that's a boring answer. We know what the most out there thing Zack has done, because he used to promise to increase the size of women's breasts.
Well, I've never done that. I've always had very credible jobs, which I build on for this role.
Go on, tell us the story.
I was on the X Factor. I was in the backing in that same choir, and I have a Christmas #1 with Ben Haynow. Not me personally having it. The choir has it, where we're the backing singers with him. But did you want to know about the other story?
I did.
Yeah, so a Sun journalist approached me and said wanted to do a article about body image. At the time, I was a struggling theatre actor who was also working in nightclubs. I was working as a waiter and a bar staff. She then said, can you do this? I said, no, I can't. She said, would you do it as an article? I said, as long as you make it clear it's nothing I charge for. She then wrote the article, and then the next day I went out on radio to say this does not represent me.
You were doing hypnotherapy in Harley Street, weren't you?
Yeah, but not, that wasn't my business or a service. So, I certainly wasn't doing that.
Right. Okay.
It's a bit of an odd nothing story that I think from time to time people try and go.
It always comes up, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But then I think people quickly go. The real lesson I learned from this is...
So you're actually denying that you actually ever offered to a woman to increase the size of their breast through therapy?
Did that. No, that would clearly be absurd. And also, I think the big lesson I've learned from this is just don't touch the sun, because you'll get burnt.
You said it was a long time ago, but you were 31 years old when this happened. Yeah. You weren't a naive sort of 17-year-old.
I didn't say it was a long time ago just then. I think, I've owned that mistake. I've apologised for it, and it was a mistake. I think we are more than one mistake.
Let's go to Robbie in Chelmsford. Hello, Robbie.
Good evening, all. As a disaffected Lib Dem ready to defect and donate, possibly, I'm interested in your answer to this. How are you going to make the climate crisis, which threatens humanity, here including the world, get the right level of salience as compared with Nigel Farage and Reform and the illegal crossings?
I should tell you that Robbie is a serial defector. He's been in virtually every political party, so you've got a tough task on your hands to keep him. Zack, let's start with you.
So I tried to debate Richard Tice on this at Glastonbury. He says it wasn't a safe space for him, snowflake.
He's probably right.
Right. But I think ultimately what we need to do is take on Reform and recognise that since the 2019 election, £2.3 million of their donations are from fossil fuel companies, climate-denying companies. And in fact, recently I was on this very desk with one of their former spokespeople, Gwaine Towler, who was denying this, but it is absolutely true. So I think the way we take on these kind of fossil fuel deniers is, one, to take them on and have bold arguments, but two, to tell the powerful stories of the difference tackling the climate crisis can do. It can reduce our bills. We can insulate homes so they're warm in the winter and cool in the summer. We can make sure that people have jobs in the public sector that are paid properly, that have dignity at work, and people are treated with the proper working conditions they can have. Tackling the climate crisis is one of the most hopeful things that our party and our country can do. But if we just have these ideas, but we don't have the bold communications and we're not telling the story, then no one is inspired by it, which is why it comes to the heart of this election. We need people that can excite the public with our green vision.
Adrian.
So I've debated Richard Tice lots of times in different media programmes as well as in Parliament, and I've repeatedly pointed out that there must be a link, I think, between the fact that Reform have had millions of pounds in donations from fossil fuel interests and that they're trying to pour cold water over net zero policies that are actually crucial, if they're done in the right way, to support ordinary people. So we've got to highlight the vested interests that are impacting what they're putting forward. But we also need to depolarise the issue, because actually when I speak to people around the country, particularly older voters, they frequently say to me, and this was a key issue in my election, they said, I want to vote for a future for my children and grandchildren. I'm worried about what I'm leaving them. And they were thinking about climate, they were thinking about nature in the rivers. And this is an issue, the sewage in the rivers, this is an issue that appeals to people across the political divide. So we mustn't increase the polarisation in politics and on climate. We need to show how we've got practical answers that will really help people, whether it's insulating their homes, whether it's improving public transport, supporting our farmers to produce more food locally. These are the messages that we need to get across. And it's really crucial that we move away from, not further towards, the sort of populist politics that means more polarisation on these issues.
But you, I understand, refuse to support wind farm pylons going through your constituency on this chain going from Norwich to Tilbury. Are you a NIMBY?
So it's a bit of a tired question, Ian, that people are. So I've been involved in campaigning for more renewable energy all my life. The two charity CEO jobs I've had in the 10 years before becoming an MP were about promoting and advancing the renewable energy industry and the sector that goes in them. I'm not going to do anything that slows down the rollout of renewable energy.
Being built in your constituency?
I completely support having the wind farms off the North Sea, and I support having the best connection route for getting those connected to the grid.
As long as it doesn't go through your constituency.
No, not at all. It's a question of how it goes through my constituency. And actually in Germany, where Greens have been part of government for a long time, they've had a policy of underground first, whereas in this country we have a policy of pylons first. There is a technical debate about the best way of doing it. The point is we've got to speed up the rollout of renewable energy. We need to engage communities in how we do that.
Do you support pylons going through his constituency?
It would be very easy for me to attack Adrian on this, but I think this is an example of why I'm glad he's one of our MPs, because I think these things are nuanced, and ultimately what he's doing is representing his constituents with the consultation. However, when it comes down to it, we need pylons. We need to make sure that we are moving that energy around the country, and we have a climate crisis. So I hope ultimately we will get round to supporting it, but Adrian's position I think is perfectly coherent.
Right, let's finish off with a few quickfire questions. Yes or no, abolish the monarchy? Adrian?
That wasn't in our general election manifesto. It's not what I'm focused on.
It's not. I did ask for yes or no.
Well, look, if I was designing our constitution from scratch, I would not have the hereditary principle in it, obviously. But is it something I'm focused on in this parliament? Is it one of our top campaigns? Well, it isn't, no. I mean, I'm focused on disability benefit cuts. Okay. I'm focused on all the other
I really do. I mean, this is supposed to be quick fire. So yes or no, Zack?
Yes.
Okay. Extinction Rebellion, asset or liability? Zack?
Asset.
It was a huge asset to the environmental movement in 2019.
Is it still?
Absolutely.
Right?
I think they told powerful stories. I think we've probably moved to the point now where we need to be doing things through electoral politics.
And what's really interesting is that part of the Green Movement's changed its strategy from saying we need to appeal to, I think they argued 3.5% of the population, to saying we need to have a much wider appeal.
Almost like they're supporting eco-populism.
Actually reflects the argument between Zack and Ellie and I.
Okay.
Apart from them making my argument, Adrian.
Right, yes or no, would you scrap the triple lock on pensions? Adrian?
No, and I'm pretty sure our manifesto said that.
Zack?
Agree.
Who's your favourite member of the cabinet? Zack?
Ed Miliband.
Adrian?
Oh, there's lots of cabinet members. I was going to say Emma Hardy because I've worked with her on flooding issues, but I think she's a minister rather than cabinet. But Bridget Phillipson, I've worked well with.
What's the one thing you'd ban tomorrow, Zack?
Private jets.
Not yachts.
You can put those in there too, 2 for 1.
Mega factory farming that is polluting our rivers and having a horrendous impact on local communities.
What's the most ungreen thing about you? Zack?
I am so ungreen-fingered, and my boyfriend is constantly trying to get me better at gardening, and I am working on it, but I'm pretty bad.
Adrian?
So I do own a car, and ironically, this being it's a hybrid car. Ironically,
I own an electric car.
Well, that's great.
I'm more green than you.
We're out. The next leader of the Green Party.
Happy to have that discussion. Actually, the reason why I got a hybrid rather than an electric is because I was living in a terraced house where it's actually very hard to do the charging, and that's something we've got to fix. But my point is, this is the first job I've had where I've had to drive for it because I'm in a very rural constituency where the public transport is dreadful.
Let's invest in buses. We can agree on that.
Right, final question to each of you. What is your opponent's strongest asset and what's his weakest point? Adrian?
Well, Zack is a really good performer. We know that Zack is good at delivering his lines. He's an actor by training. That's clearly a strength. In terms of the weakness, I think there's a major vulnerability, which does leave me really worried about the future of the party, of if saying we're going to throw out of the party people who have views we don't agree with when that's not legal, it's going to be hugely costly financially and reputationally.
Okay.
I don't think that actually represented what I said. But I would say Adrian's history in the party, I think, is a huge asset. It's undeniable that he's done many, many long years in the party. In terms of weakness, I think it is the ability to cut through, which I think, if we're honest, just hasn't happened, which doesn't stop him being a brilliant MP, and I want him to continue to be a brilliant MP. I just think our party deserves a leader who can and will cut through.
Well, thank you to you both for coming on the programme tonight. I think it's the longest debate that you've had with each other. I think it's probably the one with the biggest audience. So we'll see what happens in the leadership election. The voting starts on the 1st of August, closes at the end of August. When do we get the result? Early September, I presume?
2nd of September, yeah.
So we'll, of course, bring that to you. And in the next half an hour, I want to get your reaction to what you've heard. Has it changed your view of either the candidates, of the Green Party in particular? Do you think that with a fair win, they could make a real breakthrough at the next general election? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Ian Dale. It's 9:33. And the news headlines with Daisy Steele.
More than 100 aid organisations have signed an open letter demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Mercy Corps, the Norwegian Refugee Council and Refugees International are among those warning mass starvation is spreading across the territory. A man's been sentenced to the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of parole for murdering 4 University of Idaho students. Brian Koberger sneaked into the home they rented in November 2022 and stabbed them as they slept. Essex police have rejected claims by Nigel Farage that counter-protesters were bussed to a demonstration outside a migrant hotel